Day 2 of the $10 million trading challenge. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. So let's look at the results so far for January. We're up about $154,000 in 11 days. This week we made about $84,000, and the last video I actually made was on the 14th. That was my first video. So going forward, every single video will be made daily. However, because I did upload a day after, so we're going to go through the trades that we did take. On the 15th, I made about $20,000 on one trade, and then today I actually ended up taking two trades for about $17,000 on the day. So an $84,000 week is a solid way to end off this week. Once again, every single trade this week has been a fantastic trade for us, around a 90% daily win rate with an 85% win rate overall. But let's go over and break down these trades. So the first trade that I took was actually on Nvidia. Now this was a $20,000 trade, and this was a very, very simple trade as well. I took the 187 calls, but let me walk you through why I took this trade. So the first thing we have to do is come on over to the daily time frame. On the daily time frame, we need to see what's going on Nvidia. Now, this is once again the day that we actually traded, so we did not have this information just yet, but what I saw in Nvidia was overall on the higher time frame, we're of course bullish, right? From the daily time frame, we can see we're very, very bullish. However, short term on the daily time frame, we can see we're a little bit more neutral. I wouldn't call this bearish price action just yet, but we are definitely a little bit more neutral on Nvidia. And so this is something that I would focus on only for a long side move. I wouldn't really be focused on that bearish or downside move on Nvidia. So once I see that on the daily, I now come on over to the 4-hour time frame. On the 4-hour time frame, we can see Nvidia is kind of creating this flag or channel formation here. Now, this is something that I talk about a lot, but the flag and channel formation is something that Nvidia was creating here. And therefore, if we broke out of this, right, this is something that you want to pay attention to as momentum can kick in. If we go over to the 1-minute time frame, and this is where I actually executed my trade, we can see Nvidia on this specific day, which was the Thursday, right? We had the previous day high over here and we gapped up. Gapping up, all that means is the price is opening up above the previous day close. So because we're gapping up, what is the level that's going to hold the most significance on this stock? Well, the level that's going to hold the most significance on the stock when you're gapping up, right? So gap up or gap down days, the most significant level on the stock is always going to be your pre-market high and your pre-market low. Now, this is a strategy that I talk about on my main channel. If you're interested on how to trade that strategy, right, the link is going to be in the description, of course. However, what we're looking for here for me was simply just a pre-market high break and retest on Nvidia, right? As we can see, we marked out our pre-market high right over here, this level. We then come over here, we break above the pre-market high, we come back for the retest. Now on this retest, I need strong price action confirmation. This is going to be very important. When you guys watch my videos throughout this year, you'll notice that price action confirmation is something that I do care about and I do need on the stock. And as we can see here, this name actually had a nice break above, a retest, right? Technically, you could have entered in at 936, but the strong price action actually ended up occurring at this 939 candle. Now, for my actual entry for this 939 candle, I entered in as the candle was forming above this down close candle at 937. So the candle does not have to close because the candle that closed already for the retest was 936. This validated that proper retest for us, but I need strong price action confirmation. So as this candle was forming above this 937 and this 936 and 937 candle, this is where I enter looking for high of day and continuation. Now this candle had a very nice move to the upside, and the very next candle actually ended up hitting our 187.60 level. That's where I took some of my scales here, around 50% of my scales at this candle over here at 940s. Then we got a very, very, very nice push up into 189s. I was out about 89%. I was out, I said 89 because of 89, but I was out 80% of my position up here near this 189 level, right? As buyers are stepping up, this is a whole psychological number. You want to be careful with this, right? And then for the remaining of my position, I had this previous high, right? Which was 189.73. That's from the daily time frame. And that's really the level that I wanted it to hit. Unfortunately, what happened was Nvidia was not able to hit this level, right? Throughout later on in the day it was, but market structure ended up breaking on Nvidia as well, coming back to the downside. And therefore this trade, right, was invalidated at that point, and we were not able to hit that 189.73 for myself on this specific trade, but still overall around a 4-hour multiple trade and a very, very simple trade to execute with pre-market high. And once again, this was taken in the accelerator. So with this being said, this was the first trade. Now let's go over to today. Now today, today I took 2 trades as well. I took Nvidia and I took SNDK. Now on this Nvidia trade, you can see this was about a $1,500 day on this one. This one was a more break-even trade and we'll talk about it. And this is of course the executions that I did have. I know some of you guys wanted to see my executions, but let's talk about this trade. So coming into pre-market, I just want to show you guys really quickly, right? Good morning coming into today. This is once again in the accelerator where I live trade every day, but you can see January 16th, my top watches for today. So my top watches for today was this SNDK previous day high retest, which we'll talk about in a second here, and this Nvidia previous day pivot level retest, right? Which was about 188.83s. That's what I was interested in primarily. And then you can see I actually ended up taking SNDK today, right? Once again, took SNDK 425 calls, and you can see where buyers stepped in and where I took this SNDK trade. Once again, we'll talk about that SNDK trade. And then I also took Nvidia here as well, took the 190 calls on Nvidia, and I talked about where I wanted the retest. So let's kind of talk about this a little bit more further. So Nvidia, right? This is actually the previous day high retest, right? On Nvidia, this is the previous day high retest. And what I was looking for was essentially a break above, because Nvidia actually held that previous level that I was talking about in pre-market with the accelerator, right? It held that level and then it broke above. So once we broke above this previous day high, the only retest level that I have is the previous day high, right? So this is going to be the previous day high. On top of that, you have this down close candle, which is essentially your one candle rule, right? This is where you want to see buyers stepping in for a move to the upside. And essentially what I was looking for here was high of day as my first targets. And then I was looking for 191.42s, but typically I would scale around 190.60s here. And then 191s would be somewhere I would scale as well, right? So my scale would look like that. However, as we can see on Nvidia, what happened was we came up into high of day here. I took around 50% off at high of day, looking for more continuation specifically on this trade, right? I took off 50% because once again, I took SNDK before this already, so I was already up nicely on the day, but I really just wanted to see if I could, ride this Nvidia momentum to the upside. This one ended up actually coming back above here again one more time, but rejecting. So when I saw this one rejecting this first time, second time, this third time, I ended up taking I think around 20 to 30 more off, so 20 to 30% off more, right? So I was out about 70% of my position, but once again, this was a very small move, right? This move right here up into high of day, and I always take my high of day scales, by the way. That's very important for me. I take a one high of day scale, and then I look to ride the rest for continuation or my higher time frame target. So this high of day even right here was about 2.24, so the risk to reward was still there. However, it was just a smaller trade, about $1,500 in break even. We came back below here, right? Ended up not breaking even, but about a $1,600 day on this trade, just because, right, just a little bit more consolidation. And when we broke back below this 955 level, I ended up stopping out of the trade because once again, previous day high was broken. So that was the Nvidia trade. And then we have this SNDK trade. This was the nicer trade for today. Now, this was a $16,000 trade today for myself on SNDK. 425 calls is what I took. You guys saw that already in the accelerator. And you can see my executions here as well. Only bought one time, sold 2 times here. And by the way, one thing I do want to make very clear, you can see on this chart, right, we actually did make a high of day. On my chart, we didn't make a high of day. If you go back to the option chart, we did make a high of day on SNDK option contracts as well. So that's something that I do want to talk about. But really quickly, what did I see on this one? So on SNDK, right, the main focus here is this name on the daily time frame has been so bullish, right? Very, very aggressive price action. And so really all I was looking for was a previous day high retest on this name, right? Because if we come on over to even the 10-minute time frame here, pre-market, we are actually gapping above. So pre-market, we were gapping above this previous day high, which this previous day high already had such a nice move. And so what I was looking for was the retest into previous day high for continuation back to the upside. Now, this one, if we actually come over here, right, previous day high actually had a really nice kind of bounce back, right? The first candle technically bounced back into previous day high, but for me, that was a little bit too quick. So I was looking for a little bit more confirmation. I got my confirmation when we came back into previous day high, buyers try to step in, but then this candle, this 937 candle, once we started forming back above this down close candle, this body of this down close candle, this is where I entered looking for high of day and continuation. Now, these contracts were about $7, I believe, when I ended up buying. So I ended up buying them for about $7. They ended up being around $10 up here near highs. So the contracts moved very, very nicely. And SNDK does have a little bit of a higher spread. So when we started pushing up aggressively here with Qs actually trying to push down, I ended up scaling out a high of day on the options contract. Now the actual daily, this actual underlying did not hit high of day, unfortunately, right? but this was still a very solid trade. Now I took 80% off at this high of day level just because once again, the option contracts moved very, very nicely on a Friday with SNDK with a big spread, right? These contracts, the volume was also kind of dwindling down a little bit as well. So I took out about 80% of my position here. Then the remaining of my 20, I took off at around 954 when we broke back below this previous day high. And this was a very simple trade once again, right? Just a couple simple trades, previous day high, pre-market high, the things that I talk about in my videos on Scarface Trades, right? That's literally what I'm executing in real time in the accelerator in front of, all the traders. But it's very important to understand how I'm still trying to keep everything very, very simple. So if you got some value from this video, make sure to leave it a like. If you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. Make sure to subscribe to this channel. Let's try to see if we can hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel before the end of the year. So make sure to subscribe now so you can claim your spot before everyone else. I hope this video gave you some value, and I'll see you guys on Monday.